Well then, I bet when you pictured the first coaches I'd build for this project, it would have probably been the vintage four-wheel coaches, or possibly even the bogie stock. Well, stick this in your modelling orifice. A brand new kit for the open coaches. Bam! Hi guys. So, Westcliff Works. We're only 2 videos in, and I hope you've already understood that I'm a big fan of these guys. We will see more of their well-known models during this build, but first up are the open coaches. Oh, and I should say before we kick this off, that this isn't their normal packaging. Alec did a great job of delivering all these kits for me in the 11th hour of planning, so full marks for customer service there. Also, if you're watching this on the video's release, the reason I'm doing these kits first is because Westcliff are releasing this model at the 009 exhibition at Statfold this weekend, so go and buy one. And yes, that's an order. So back to the model. So on the Talyllyn open coaches, they're all slightly different from one another, and this is a model of number 8. These kits are resin printed, so the finish is as good as they get for 3D models. However, for the good of science, I'm going to have a go at sanding the panels a bit. I'm using wet and dry, and then I smooth them off with a fiberglass pen. I'm not sure what this does, but it looks like it's doing something. The model has had an undercoat in grey car primer, and then a top coat of crystal blue by Army Painters. This particular model is going to depict number 8 as running as a skarloey coach. The models usually need a couple of coats of Army Painters as it's quite thin. The only additional detail that I'm giving these coaches are the security bars that are on the opposite to platform side. So with that done, this part is sprayed in white, instead of grey, as it's, well, white. The coach in this livery doesn't actually have complex borders to paint, so we can go straight on to painting the underframes in black. I think the most important thing at this step is to use a good quality masking tape. I'm poor, so I'm all for knockoff makes where it suits. But masking tape really does need to work how you're expecting it to. Better quality tape also reduces the risk of pulling off the paint from underneath. Due to the style of the doors, additional pieces of tape are added to mask them off. To mask off the rest of the coach, a larger width of tape is used, and I just fold this over the top of the model and then finish it off with another piece, to make sure it's sealed in. The model is now sprayed with acrylic black primer. The reason I'm using primer and not just a black acrylic that I use for the black wash is that it's a much darker black when it's dry. The model's dried off now, so I'm going to start painting the floor in. This colour is Ash Grey by Army Painters. It's quite tricky to get a good edge due to the small area. So I've found the best method is to paint towards the side of the coach. So paint one side, turn it round and then do the other side. And when that's done you can fill the middle in. This is just one coat done, so it'll need another coat when it's dry. I wanted to add decals. However, in this livery, number 8 has black numbering with a white shadow, and I couldn't work out how to do that in the time I had. So I found the best way was just to flip the colours around and use the Old Time Workshop decals as a base. These are water slides, so just need pressing in place. I use a cotton bud to absorb the excess water out from below it. When it's dry, I paint over the gold with white. Sod it, it's close enough for my liking. Then my life went to pot when my assistant took it upon herself to paint the coach when I went to cook egg on toast, and this made me sad. So I stripped the model back to resin and did it all again. Heavy breathing, CBT, and we're moving on. The top of the coach was masked off and the roof was sprayed with dungeon grey. When it's dry, I removed the masking and hand painted the edges of the roof to match the top. This seemed a much quicker and easier option than trying to mask it from below. The coach can now be assembled, and due to the clever design, the parts feature a pin and socket to aid the join. Right, that's number 8 done, but I've got 2 kits, so the second will be number 13. And this coach is currently running in the standard Talyllyn red and brown. So the first thing to do after primer is to paint the red panels. For this I'm using Rolt 220, which is really close but has a gloss finish. I've also found that 2 coats is a suitable cover for this type of paint. The interior of the coach is also red, but the floor, same as number 8, is grey, so the same paint is used. Whilst I wait for the first coat to dry, I'll work on the brown. I mask off the interior, because as I mentioned, it's red. To be fair, it looks pretty rough as it is, but trust me, when the gloss is coated with a satin varnish, it looks a lot better. So on the TR coaches, the panels are red, but the wood framing around is brown, so I need to mask off the panels. In 009, I find the easiest way to paint this is to do the horizontal and the vertical parts separate. So here I'll start with the horizontal. So the colour here is Humbrol number 62, which has a matte finish. One thing I forgot before this point was to modify the doors to suit the style of number 13, which has thicker wood below the doors. I just used some thin plastic art for this and glued them on with liquid poly. The top of the coach also needs modifying to suit number 13. And this came in the way of more plastic art. After a coat of white, the roof panels need masking off to spray the brown parts. And this can then be sprayed to match the bottom. So now the bottom is dry, and this takes a while for enamel, The verticals can now be masked off as well. And it should look something like this. Very nice. And here we are, more Humbrol number 62. Be prepared to hear this number a lot through this series. With the masking off, the finer parts can now be hand painted on. It will be difficult to see inside the roof of these coaches when they're on the layout, but it's a nice detail to add. The edges of the roof are also hand painted in number 82. And these are then masked off in preparation to paint the roof. And now we paint the roof. This is the same dungeon grey as the previous coach. And the underframe is painted black. The only difference here is that the footboard is masked off before painting, as it's the colour of the coach. The parts are then sealed with a satin finish, and this really helps settle down the red. It also helps to blend all the colours. The roof is also varnished. And because I forgot before, the blue and white coach is also varnished here. The final thing to do is to add the transfers to number 13. At this point I didn't know that the real number 13 isn't actually sporting a number at the moment, so I've since removed it, so pretend you didn't see that bit. And the final thing to do is add the wheels. These kits are designed to use 6.2mm wheels, so the Greenwich wheel sets are ideal. And look at that, even without modifying the axle boxes, they run perfect. So there we are, the first coaches for Llangwernal are done. Brilliant models, run well, and available at Statfold. So do me a solid, go and find Westcliff Works stand, go and talk to Alec, and buy one. Good lad. Cheers.